long-standing and long-lasting impacts for the workforce, the female workforce. Now, I'm going to throw immediately to you, Shrid, because I know that PwC has done loads of work on this over the last year or so, including a wonderfully named Hopes and Fears survey. So do you want to just do a little bit of scene setting for us, please?
Thank you very much, Angela, and good morning, everyone. Sarika. Pleasure to be in a setting like this. I think it's been, well, certainly more than 2 years that I've been presenting at a live session like this. And I apologize that I'm not in a wheelchair or an elevator, but here in person. So Angela, you're absolutely right. We have done a fair bit of work, and we did something called the Hopes and Fears survey. And this was essentially speaking to employees, about 89,000 of them across the whole world, and from about 80 countries or so, and trying to get a sense of how they felt about work, what was most important for them, what were their hopes, what did they expect employers to do, and what were their fears as well at the same time. And I think the couple of key things that came out of that was in fact, the majority of employees felt that some form of hybrid working is what they expect going forward. So, and that came through clearly across demographics, across the various countries as well. And that actually means organizations need to prepare for a world going forward where hybrid working practices should be part and parcel of what you need to deliver to employees as well. But then there's another part of the survey, there's another part of the findings from the survey that actually says that about 45% of those surveyed said that they didn't have the opportunity to actually work remotely. So there is a risk that as we prepare for a world where a lot of it is hybrid, many people actually can't participate in that. So I think really the point is organizations will really need to think about how do they prepare and what is the work organization and culture going forward as well. And there's a risk that we are preparing everything for a hybrid workforce, whereas many people are not able to participate in that. I think the other point I would make is that, for many women, the reality of it is working at home is not really the better option. It could be for men because it gives a break from getting to the office and so on, but for women it's not the case because they have other responsibilities. As was discussed in the earlier panels and discussions, they have other responsibilities, looking after children, looking after other household needs, and all of that falls on them. So the impact on women as we've moved to this environment over the last 2 years, and possibly going forward as well, is much, much greater. So what we're saying essentially is, our view is that in order to make this work, yes, you need to prepare for a hybrid workforce going forward, but you need to make sure that this doesn't become exclusively that. You need to ensure that we do not have proximity bias, and we also need to make sure that it is fair and transparent across both types of working modes, whether people are there in person, whether people are working remotely as well. Those are sort of few initial things that came out of it, and I'm happy to expand on that, Angela.
Great, thank you very much. I'm going to go to Jim while I can see him, and he's, then I'll come to you, Harold, but I just want to get him while he's there. So Jim, I hope you heard what Shrid was saying. I know that 3M is working on bringing in a hybrid model here in Asia, but while this looks good in theory, what does it mean for gender diversity? I mean, how are you going to make sure that people stay front of mind even though they're out of sight?
Yeah, thanks. And just want to make sure you can hear me now?
We can.
Well, okay, perfect. So, yeah, globally we've rolled out something called Work Your Way. And so it gives people the option of, remote working, some form of hybrid or mainly on site. And I think as we rolled that out and as we've had this experience of the last few years, first of all, we've had, and I don't want to quote numbers because we're still, there are still more countries that have yet to roll it out, allow people back into the office was really the thing there. But we've had a significant number of people choose remote work. So as we look at it, I would say our workforce is going to be forever changed. Sorry about that, I lost.
We forgive you everything, just take your time.
Okay, yes, so I will continue. so the workforce is forever changed. So I think, and we haven't seen, a significant difference in men and women choosing remote or hybrid or on-site. So while we don't know all the answers yet today, we have a couple of things that we will try to focus on. And I think, the idea of focusing on output and not proximity bias is something that we, as obviously many other companies are aware of, and really trying to drive that, as we have to drive many of our culture initiatives by, educating, reminding, reinforcing that as we talk to our supervisor community. There, to be honest, there are many places in Asia, especially, where the idea of coming to the office is, and time at the office is an important part of the old way of managing and evaluating. So in Asia, we have spent a lot of time with our supervisors, making sure, and of course the employees, but to make sure that people understand that it is a choice, and then continue to reinforce this idea. I'll be anxious to hear if somebody has that answer, that silver bullet answer. But that is the first thing that I would say that we are doing. And maybe the other perspective that I would bring is even as people choose remote, we talk a lot about gathering for moments that matter. And so this idea of getting together and seeing faces for important moments, I think can be pivotal. And so we're trying to figure out what are those moments that matter. When do we try to gather people, even though we have this remote option? When are those important times when we should gather people? And maybe the third personal example that I will share. So, as Angela said, I arrived in Thailand on Wednesday night, and was greeted by our country leader here in Thailand. I came to Korea and Asia in January of 2020, right before COVID hit, and I have never met Wiada, even though in that time, we've put her into the role, and she has thrived in that role. And we meet on Wednesday, and it really is like old friends. So I think if we all work to make these virtual connections, using we find using video as much as you can helps that. I think it's possible, but it's not easy. But I think we have to keep an eye on making sure that it is, that we still, even though we're not connecting face to face, we're connecting virtually face to face, to keep to keep that maybe that human bias of relating to people in some way, shape, or form, as one of the other options.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll stop there, Angela.
Okay.
And let
So
you go on.
stay with us. Don't go anywhere. We can hear you and we can see you, but we can see
All right.
you. So if they want you to get changed, turn your camera off. Okay. So
Okay.
Harold.
Perfect.
Your company has upstream and downstream workforces. Those people mining, finding, and making things have little access, I suppose, to a hybrid way of working, right? They work, correct me if I'm wrong, but they kind of have to work to a certain system. So what happened to the women in that workforce? Do you have a lot of women in that workforce? And can you tell us about the new ways of working for your office teams? Is productivity back for you?
Okay. First of all, thank you for having me here, yeah? A man among so many successful and wonderful women. A close friendship with Kun Kop Kan and Kun Prasad Suk, who's sitting here on that table, and admire them greatly. Actually, maybe the woman I admire most is the one in whose palace grounds we were yesterday. And I think she is a perfect example of how you spend your entire life for the betterment of society, and at the same time run large organizations like the Thai Red Cross, in which we both are committee members, and do it in such a wonderful, peaceful, quiet, compassionate way that everybody in the organization, everybody in the committee, we do it for her and for the country. And everybody in the whole Thai Red Cross admire her so much that they dedicate themselves for the betterment. And I think this is the most important. I think this, which way we communicate, which way we work or so, that is completely subsidiary. What is most important is how can we do something which is good for society, and how can we always remember that part. And there, of course, women, I think, have a little bit advantage over us men, because from the very beginning, they have to care. I mean, which father who is old and has a daughter isn't being taken care of by the daughter? Everyone. By the son, maybe less. So, on the other hand, for the leadership of a company, our duty is not only to provide benefit for society, but to really care for the people that work with us. So when the COVID hit and we had this kind of, fortunately, only partial lockdown, first thing I did is I jumped in the car myself and go to every of our power plants and every of our factories to tell everybody we stand behind them, and we're grateful for those who cannot go home. They stay in the power plant and look after it, and this were men and women. So for me, whether we work offline, online, see each other, not see each other, we all need to focus on what we are here for, and we are here for to provide some benefit for society. So I think, personally, I don't see it. I think it's a minor issue. You work from home, you work from here, we work from there. We have to always adapt to the new environment and the new possibilities. Big Grim introduced the first telephone call between Germany and Thailand. We also introduced the first telegraph. And the telegraph was a much higher revolutionary effect than the internet. So can you imagine, instead of 6 weeks traveling from one place to the other, suddenly you connect immediately. So I think these things will happen all the time, but we always have to focus on society. And the women are, of course, the ones who have more compassion, and they are better to connect, so they always play an important role in our company.
I'm glad to hear that, but I assume you've also got shareholders, and so they're interested in a return. I mean, if you can give them a good return at the same time, help society and run a compassionate company, that's great. But what about your business?